The Swell Season podcast is recorded by the NewsStand studio at Rockefeller Center in the heart of Manhattan and is distributed by the Swell Season Surf Radio Network.
Radio with the art and design series with Kris and Kris. And this week we have on Kris. So it's the three Krises. We've got Kris Chatterson. Yeah, we've got Kris Chatterson back on again. And this is going to be an interesting conversation. This is part 2 of the Kris Chatterson interview. We had him on a few years ago when he was in a different stage, a different geographic location in his life. And this is a conversation that I think has been evolving over a couple of years. I'm actually a good friend of Kris Chatterson, and I've had the pleasure of watching his artwork grow and evolve, and watching his life grow and evolve. And there have been amazing epiphanies and amazing revelations that have happened over the last couple of years. And one of the things that I think is incredible is just the growth that we all go through as people and as artists. So welcome, Kris Chatterson.
Welcome, Kris.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back too.
So it's been pretty awesome. I've gotten to see you twice, I'd say, in the last 7 days. I saw,
twice in less than 48 hours apart.
Yeah. I mean, I got like the double dose of Kris Chatterson in like 48 hours. But Kris just opened an exhibition of his artwork at Satchel Project in New York City. Kris, can you tell us about that exhibition?
Well, it's a group show, and it's it's called Authority Problem. And it's a collection of artists who make art that is distinctly anti-authoritarian. And the work of mine included are the punk rock posters and abstract punk rock posters and paintings that I made last year.
Okay. So for those of you who might have missed the chapter 1 of Kris Chatterson, we interviewed him at a time where he was fully embedded in the Rhode Island surf scene up in the South County of Rhode Island, and was full on into making his paintings. Had just made a transition out of Brooklyn and kind of reestablished a new home for his family, and was starting on a whole new life for a whole bunch of different reasons, and where we are now is a whole new chapter. And one of the things that we've been talking about over the last couple of months and maybe even years is just the evolution of a career and the evolution of priorities. And I just wanted you to talk about that, Kris. Like if you could remember like where we left off, you were talking about your creative process. You were talking a lot about your paintings. You were talking a lot about what it was like to move out of Brooklyn and reestablish yourself in Rhode Island. And we were talking a lot about community and the new community that you were embedding yourself in up in Rhode Island. And maybe you just start from there.
So like my time in Rhode Island, like how I think about it now, like having not lived there for almost like at least about 4 years.
Yeah,
It
well,
was
I
4
mean,
years since you left Rhode Island?
Yeah, I moved January of 2021.
Okay. I feel like those
So
years kind of just ripped by. Like, it feels like yesterday I was sitting in McCarran Park with you,
yeah, I
but
remember
that
that.
was probably 12 years ago now.
No, it was more than that, man.
15?
At least.
Oh, Jesus.
At
you
least.
guys are old, man.
Anyway, so like, it's been now 4 years since you left Rhode Island. You're in Orange, which is very close. A lot of people who come from, like, leave Brooklyn go to the Oranges.
Yeah.
So-
So yeah, so there's a confluence of things that happened to kind of bring on the idea of us moving back in the direction of being close to New York City. But one of the reasons why we picked here is it really like these suburbs are really like a borough of New York.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know, a lot of people in Brooklyn are going to disagree, but my commute from here to Manhattan, it's the same amount of time as it was when I was living in Ridgewood
Yep.
and taking
Right.
the M. In fact, it might even be faster because the M was never super reliable, and sometimes it would just stop and you had to get out and jump on another train, walk a few blocks, and it was always, you never knew. Not that NJ Transit is super that much better, but at least you're going to get to where you're going without having to get off.
I remember Ridgewood. I lived off of Onderdonk, and it was like
Yeah.
you could not rely on the trains to get you
Mhm.
anywhere.
No,
I'm guessing
maybe
that's
it's different now.
Yeah.
But the point is like, I say I'm back even though I'm in New Jersey, and some people will be like, well, you're not in Brooklyn. I'm like, well, I still can get to the city and do whatever I need to do in the city just as fast as most people that live in Brooklyn or wherever.
Yeah, and life changes, right? Life
Yeah.
changes. Yeah, I mean, I'm not in Brooklyn anymore either, and I can still get there if I need to. You know.
Well, I guess the point I was going to make is what I liked about this area is, one, I already had friends that lived here, and two, there are a lot of people that were in Brooklyn or a place like Brooklyn when they were younger are here now. And like I have neighbors that were, a couple blocks over from where we were, or the next neighborhood over. It's like I don't feel like I'm in a strange place with people that don't have like a similar life experience to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's. I just want to take a step back because I think it'll set the stage for our conversation. So you had moved from Brooklyn. You had a young family, and you moved to Rhode Island, and that was a lot of the people who knew you as a painter and a surfer in an urban setting were kind of dumbfounded by that move, right? They were just like, "You're moving to Rhode Island for what?"
Yeah, well, and then the people we met in Rhode Island had the same reaction too. They were like, well, do you have family here? And we're like, no. And they're like, well, why are you here? So yeah, it was really on some levels, both Carrie and I were kind of burnt out in some ways of being in the city and trying to negotiate just a life of being in the city and a career and managing a young child with a second on the way. And we had thought about, I think we talked about this a little bit on the previous conversation. We did think of, places maybe on Long Island or going up the Hudson Valley, which a lot of people did since then. or parts of New Jersey. And at the time we were just, I think I was a little more open to it, but Carrie was definitely like not open to New Jersey, just mostly because she had lived in Hoboken for a while. And that, you know, depending on how you feel about Hoboken, if your experience wasn't positive, I could see why you wouldn't want to come back,
Right.
even though we're not in Hoboken now. But anyways, we wanted to go somewhere where we could kind of disappear and just focus on raising a family, and you know, the city would be there when we wanted to engage with it, but we would be in like a more rural setting for our life.
Right. So you kind of went full on into the community, the surf community up there. And the last time, a week ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago when I saw you, I think we were talking about community a little bit. And you were very much a mainstay in that surfing community. And you were even toying with the idea of starting a business in the surf industry.
Well, I did start a small brand, and but I didn't want to. I want to clarify. I think there's a pathway, like a weird pathway that happens with people in surfing when you really get into it, and sometimes you end up creating a small business, whether it's you're making fins, or you know, you create a brand, or you create maybe you start shaping boards, especially if, with creative people, or you start a surf shop, which I'd also thought about, but everyone I had talked to was like, yeah, don't do it.
It's a tough business. Yeah.
Yeah, I love small businesses, but I also location, and then what you intend to do with that business needs to make sense with what your customer base would be. And I don't know that the kind of shop I would want to make would really survive in that southern part of Rhode Island. But anyways, back to your point, I think I was let into the community there because they could see or could tell that I just genuinely loved surfing and everything about it. Not just like getting waves or, you know, getting my picture taken. I was in conversation with people about various things in and out of the water. I had friends. We would go to some of the events, actually some of the Swell events, in Rockaway, or like the fish fry, or like there was the
That might have been the last time we met each other in person, was like a Rockaway fish fry, I think, right?
probably
Yeah.
probably
Or a cafe.
what was
Asbury.
You would go to the grain. You would also
Yeah.
go up to the grain events up in Maine as
Yep.
well. Didn't you?
Yeah. So I was making friends in like a community of people that stretched from New Jersey all the way up to Maine. And then eventually down to all the way down to Florida. So I had the whole East Coast, a network of people. And then I had a network of people in California that then branched, and this is all via social media, that branched all the way up and down the West Coast. And I think what I caught wind of and kind of got caught up in is there was like a sub group of people that were really interested in a certain kind of alternative surfing. And there was nothing out there that like represented that interest, or I shouldn't say nothing. There was not a lot that wasn't affiliated with a particular brand of surfboard, or a name or a logo of a particular surfboard, something that encompassed the whole idea. In my case, it was displacement hull surfing. And so I had the Holoholic Instagram feed that it felt like it kind of blew up, and unintentionally in my part, overnight, but it did take some time to grow. But once it started to go, it just kind of went crazy. And I had no idea that at the time, the power of social media and how things would snowball. And then that there was so many people out there. I would get DMs from people like, "Oh man, I'm the only person in my break that surfs a displacement hall." And it's nice to know that there are other people that do that. And, I was going to keep it like, super underground, like no logos, no stickers, no t-shirts. But then of course, I had somebody that ended up becoming a friend, had a screen printing business, and they took my one of my designs and they just mocked it up in Photoshop and sent it to me. And it's like, "Let me print this." And I'm like, "What do you do?" Because people want it, right? That's what people want it. And I'm like, "All right, I'll do whatever, 50, a very small order." And then I put it out there. He sent me a photo once he got the first one printed up, and I posted it. And I had every shirt sold before the box arrived to me in Rhode Island. I had to basically turn around and pack them all up and send them out, and then had to have more made. So that's a slow way of saying, eventually, after doing that a few times and then being invited out to the boardroom, I don't know what it's called now, trade show down in is it Del Mar?
Yeah, it's in Florida.
The Surf Expo?
The Surf Expo.
Not the one in Florida, the one down in it's not quite San Diego. It's not that far south. I think it's the boardroom. It was called the boardroom. I'm out of the loop, just to be clear.
Yeah.
I'm going to get things wrong. But I was going to do that on invitation, and like having shirts made in California, and being invited to sell stuff there. And I was like, well, maybe I should start, since people want this, and it's at that small scale where it was still a very one-to-one. I never did a website. If you wanted something, it was just like DM me and then send me a PayPal and a Venmo, and I'll get you sorted.
Right.
It was a one-to-one thing. There was no nobody else was involved. I had a little station in my basement with the little bit of products that I had, and when I get an order in, I would go and personally pack it, and I would take a picture of it for the customer and send it to them so that they knew it was coming. I tried to make it special for the people ordering, mostly because I was like, well, if they're gonna spend their money on this little thing I'm doing, I should make it a cool experience for them. But eventually I was like, well, maybe I should separate it from the Holaholic thing, because I didn't want that name, which is not a word that I came up with. That was Kurt Putnam's word, and he was nice and like kind of let me run with it, and we became friends.
Rest in peace, right?
No, KP's still alive.
KP's still alive?
Yeah.
Different Kirk.
Yeah. It might be a different Kirk. I just messaged him a little while back. I checked in on him when those fires were going on.
Okay.
Well, so I kind of want to cut to the chase, because I think for me, the epicenter of this conversation is that you're not surfing anymore. And what I'm hearing is that, like, you became so embedded in a community that your people got to know you, and then the sport itself just took on a new life, and now here you are trying to satisfy customers, and you're getting invited places, and now this person, you, no longer surfs, right? And you've made it was like you made a definitive choice when you moved to New Jersey, that this is not part of my life anymore, and this is not who I am. And I want you to kind of comment on how and why that happened. And I find that interesting, because, like, as almost arresting as it was for you to move out of Brooklyn and up to Rhode Island, and people were perplexed by that. When you moved to New Jersey and said, I'm no longer surfing anymore, and I honestly have nothing to do with it, that's also pretty arresting. And because I know you and I respect you and I respect your process and your evolution as a person and an artist and you said something to me one day. You said to me, Kris, I just go where the energy is. I go where the energy is. And I was like, yes, this makes sense. So before we talk about like where you are now and what you're doing, which I find so super interesting, tell us why you just like went cold turkey on surfing, because I don't think I could do that.
Well, I'm gonna say I'm not. I'm on sabbatical
Mm-hmm.
from surfing, and we'll get into why. And it's so I should preface this whole thing by saying I'm the kind of personality, if I'm into something, I'm into it 100%. And if I can't give it 100%, I can't do it. I don't know how to do something halfway. I don't know how to be casual about something. I can't. I'm either in it and I'm in it, or I'm not.
I'm like that too. So I get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of continue where I was with the business thing and tie it into my art. And then, the pandemic hitting was a huge kind of event, I think, for everybody, but that plays into some of this too. So anyways, I want to say unintentionally, but obviously that's not quite true. But I found myself starting a business, getting involved in a very small way. I want to be clear, it's a very small situation, but getting involved with the surf business a little bit. I was getting to know people that had shops, people that liked the stuff I was doing, people offering to like sell it, some on consignment, some would just buy some of what I had and wholesale and then sell it. And I was doing wetsuits. I was having these custom made Japanese rubber, made in Japan wetsuits made with my logo on it. And I won't get too much into the details, but I reached a point where I knew if I walked through the door of this particular opportunity, I could probably really grow the thing into something for real. And I probably wouldn't paint again. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, like my whole life from being a child, going through school, going to college, before meeting Carrie and getting married, and then after, and the whole thing, my whole life has been pointed in the direction of living the life and doing, having a career as a painter. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't turn my back on who I am and what I aim to do in my life. And so I had to I just stopped. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't even I didn't even hesitate. It's like I knew what it meant, and I knew that I think a lot of people like work really hard to kind of have that kind of an opportunity for like trying to launch a small business in a way that could be for real. And I was like, I can't do it. I'm not going to do it.
Well, it would become all consuming, and you'd leave that piece of yourself that you've always aspired to be in the rearview mirror. You would leave it behind.
Yeah, and and it's the only, I guess the hard part of saying no to it is that I love small businesses. I get excited about all of my friends who have small businesses, whether it's a surf shop. I'm friends with my friend Mike, who has a music shop down in Red Bank. Like, I love small businesses, and I'm actually good at it, you know, but I can't do it because the thing that I really do for real is paint. You know, I'm an artist, and that's what I do.
So, all right. So all right, here we are. You made the move. You stopped surfing. Um, you're on sabbatical.
So, so it's a little more. So I stopped surfing because living in Rhode Island, I got very spoiled because I was 5 minutes from a variety of breaks that worked in a relative variety of directions, or
Right.
wind directions and swell directions. I could get up early and surf for, sometimes I would time myself and say, okay, I've got 20 minutes to get a handful of waves and get out.
Mm-hmm.
And I could still have a day. I could still go about my day, and it's like not a thing. I'm about an hour away from waves now. And I can't do it. I can't go through the whole, everything that it has to do, that goes into doing that.
Mhm.
Also, one of the main reasons, not all of the reasons, but one of the big reasons moving back closer to New York, was for my career. You know, moving to Rhode Island really didn't do my showing career any favors. It was very difficult to get anybody to come out or see things, and you know, getting a bunch of likes and followers and all that on social media is fine, and getting comments and people like cheering you on is fine, but turning that into shows is a completely different thing.
Right.
And I wanted to have a studio that was closer so I
Mm-hmm.
could have more people by, because I think a special thing about living in a kind of dense area where you have a lot of people kind of doing a similar thing as you, is you have that um, compression of ideas where you're constantly bouncing ideas off of one another. So having people over to the studio to talk to, and going visit other people's studios, and is going to visit work, and it not taking like a half day or longer to go do it, and to keep things fresh and moving, something that I kind of lost out on when I moved to Rhode Island. Now, I say that, but I want to follow that with, I was burnt out when we moved to Rhode Island. So there was a part of like living the kind of art life in New York that I was purposefully leaving behind, because it wasn't sustainable for me, you know, psychologically and emotionally. I really needed a break from it all, because the life I was living prior to moving to Rhode Island was, you know, was working all the time in the studio, going to other studio visits, was heavily involved in several couple blogs, two of which I started. One I started, one I co-started, curating shows. It was, and then having a child on top of that. And then when you're a kind of a person where you're like making moves and you're curating people into shows, and like for a time I was doing interviews for like Bomb Magazine. I was kind of making a name for myself, and then you start getting pulled in all these different directions. And I really just wanted to focus on, you know, raising my two young children,
Mm-hmm.
being the best partner I could be to Carrie, and developing as an artist.
Mhm.
And so that's another reason we packed up and moved. So fast forward 8 years, a lot had happened. A pandemic hits. Now, our plan in Rhode Island was we wanted to stay for as long as the kids were in school. We wanted to get them out of high school and then see where they land. And then we always knew we would move somewhere else when we were done and the kids were grown. We would move either back this direction or maybe go out west or wherever. But then the pandemic hit and we're all stuck at home and we're really seeing this other side. I won't get too into the details. We're just seeing this other side of the area we were living in that I really wasn't a fan of. And so it was kind of coming toward, we were at the end of lockdown, but it was still 2020. So like, everybody was still wearing masks and it was, you were still encouraged to like not be in like large groups of people and all of that. But we were riding around Providence, and it was during that time I kind of, because I was in charge of my kids and their school. I don't know if you remember when we were doing the homeschool thing, remote learning as they called it. Basically, I felt like I was like a teacher's assistant, because we would get all of the assignments in and then I would make sure each kid was doing what they needed to be doing, or they were on the live feed that they needed to be on, or they were turning the thing in that they needed to turn in. So being in charge of all of that, there was no time to do anything. There was no time to surf, no time to make art, which is fine. Like, that it was an emergency situation. Glad I could be there and help my family. But, the way I've talked about it, I think with you, Kris, is felt like we all kind of jumped off the treadmill that we've been like kind of doing day in and day out prior to that. And having come off it and had a chance to like really sit and reflect on things. One day we were driving around Providence and I was like, I really, really miss being in a city.
Yeah.
I loved being in the more country part of Rhode Island, and it's very picturesque and beautiful. But there's that part of me that I like being around people that are like doing things, having ideas, and it being quick and easy to like, go down the street and you're at a coffee shop, and you go over here and you're at the art supply store, and you go over here and there's a bar and maybe there's a music venue, and like it's easy to get to places where a lot of people are doing cool things. And Providence definitely has that. Like there's the cool things going on in Providence, and there's actually a really cool music history in Providence, and cool music coming out of Providence now. But as we were driving around thinking, well, maybe we'll move to Providence, I was like, no big deal. Like, jetting down to go surfing, no problem. Like I'll do that. But then we were driving around and we're like, if we're going to move to like an urban area, let's just go back.
Go back to where you came from, because
Go back.
Yeah.
And I mean, and like, again, we're in the suburbs of New Jersey. We're not really back, like we're not in Brooklyn, like reliving our life, that we had whatever 15 years ago or more. But, and it took some kind of convincing too, on both our parts, because we had really settled in on the idea of like, we're just going to be here for the duration of our kids' education, But we were kind of open, and we came down and visited like Maplewood, South Orange area, visited some friends, rented a hotel in 2020, like in that summer. And was like, this is cool. Like we can have a house and we'll have a yard, and like having a dog won't be an issue. And Jersey City, which is where my studio is, it's just down the way. It's like 15-minute drive, and I have a big, beautiful studio.
Yeah.
which as for me, the kind of artist I am, having the studio is a huge thing. And I didn't really realize that until I didn't have a studio and I was working out of the basement of the house that we had. That I realized, like, this is really hard, like really trying to make work at a high level, and I can barely see it.
Yeah. Yes. You just got to be able to have the space to back away from it, or to just kind of live within the space to make the work that you want to make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I had an experience. I had a friend that we did like a FaceTime studio visit because he hadn't seen my work in a minute. And I was showing him all this stuff, and I had this one painting to the side, and I wasn't showing it to him. And he's like, "What's that painting?" I'm like, "No, that's trash. Trust me. Like, you don't. It's a garbage piece. I don't like it." He's like, "Just pull it out." I'm like, "Listen, I'm going to show it to you, but I'm telling you, no." And I pull it out, and he's like, maybe you're not seeing what I'm seeing, but like, this is a really great painting. Like, but you have, because he was seeing it, it was a bigger painting in a space that doesn't really accommodate a big painting, but he was seeing it on a screen like this big, right? So he can actually see the painting, he could see what it was. And so I took a picture of it and I shrunk it down on my phone. I was like, okay, now I get it. So I'm having these experiences of like, man, I'm not like, as a painter and an artist, I'm not in the right place. Like I came to the right place at the time that I needed to be, but I think my time has changed. Like now I think I need to be somewhere else. I need to head in a different direction now.
Yeah.
Because that part of my life is over.
Well, that's the growth and the evolution part that I love and I respect. I mean, I want to segue into music, and I've been thinking a lot about music because I always find a lot of inspiration in musicians that endure time, and they continue to put out albums, and people are like, oh, it doesn't sound like their old stuff, and I'm like, of course it doesn't.
I hope it doesn't.
Of course, yeah, of course it doesn't. And it's funny. I always look at like U2. Like I mean, I saw U2 when I was like 14 or 15 years old at a tiny little nightclub in Lido Beach at the Malibu nightclub. Right. I saw them in their infancy when they came to the United States, and I grew up with them, and then all of a sudden people are like, oh, they're sellouts, they suck, and like and I'm like, hold on a second. I'm like, they're just growing as artists. They're not sellouts. They don't suck. They're just growing, and they're different than they used to be, right? So,
No, I think they should stop making music.
well, I mean, like, say what you want. I'm just interested in the arc of a career. I mean, I'm interested in the evolution of creativity.
A lot of that. So like the career part, like a lot of that's out of your hands. Like, because if you did have that much control over it, everybody would be successful in some way. Like everybody would have the whatever the career you hope you could have. But a lot of it is really out of your control. I was actually the first night I saw you at my the opening for the group show, I ran into a friend in the subway while I was taking my son to a music show at the Warsaw after, and we got to talking about, artists of a certain age who are the peers of people that are like, have really made it, that are like at that like blue chip level gallery.
Right.
And they're really that caliber of a painter, but their career just hadn't really gotten there yet, for whatever reason. And it's like so much, we were talking about how so much of this is just out of your control.
Yeah.
Like, when you've been in this long enough and you have like a long enough arc of a career, I think it was Chuck Close said something to this effect, is like, we're all confident. It's not that at this stage in the game, anybody's, measurably better than anybody else. It's those uncontrolled factors that are at play as to like who who wants to take you on as a gallery, or what collectors, or what curator, or you were in this group show and this critic saw you, or this collector saw you, and now you're over here. Like, there's no control over that.
Right. Well, I think, well, I want to go back to something that I remember as you were leaving, getting ready to leave Rhode Island, maybe in the last like couple of months, you were experimenting with sound. You were, yeah, and you were experimenting with like feedback, and you had made some experimental pieces, and I was really interested in that. And jump a year or two later, you are now, and it's completely invested in the pursuit of music. And I feel like your musical pursuits right now is what your surfing used to be. That's the way I see it. And I wanted you to kind of like talk a little bit about like where you are right now with the dot tones. And I know that kind of maybe had inspired you to create your punk rock poster series. And I know we were talking a lot about community, DIY. There's so much going on there in your interest in music and punk rock community, and I feel like that's where you are now. That's your evolution. And when you said to me, I go where the energy is, I'm like, that's your energy now. That's where you're finding your inspiration, and it's definitely seeping into the work that you're making now. Where when you were in Rhode Island, I feel like surfing was seeping into your work. And I feel like now there's this like undercurrent of music informing your work. And I'm not so sure that surfing has left your work, but
Totally not.
yeah,
Totally not.
so I want you to talk about that and your interest in music and like how it's influencing what you're doing. And so, because there's a whole new chapter going on.
I'll agree that there's definitely a new chapter. The music, there's always been like a music, even just as a fan or as someone who was naively misunderstanding ways music were made, but using that idea as a framework to make a painting. Music's always been there in the work. Especially the kind of abstraction that I make. I think it lends itself to, I want to say, like other creative activities to kind of bleed into because of the movement. So it lends itself to like athletic gestures, whether it's dance or surfing or what have you. And then there's a lyricism and a repetitiveness to it that lends itself to things like music and flow and waves and ideas like that.
For sure.
But so a more direct influence definitely comes out of having the Dot Tones, which is a band that started off with just my family. And it really got started. So my oldest son plays bass, and he started playing bass before we moved. And there's a longer conversation that we can get into if you want, as to how the whole music thing got started. But he had an interest in playing bass, and so he started playing bass in Rhode Island. We moved here, continued to play bass. He currently plays bass in the middle school jazz band. And he plays bass in the Dot Tones. But when we were starting the band, he was like, I really want Mom to be in the band too. And I want to just be very clear. Carrie had never touched a guitar in any meaningful way prior to the Dot Tones. She's gone
that.
from 0 to 100. And it's all because my oldest was like, I want Mom in the band. And she said, okay. And then she backed it up. Like she practiced. I got her a guitar and an amp, and then she has since like gotten the bug. Like now she has like, she's really into like the lap steel right now, but like she has a cool amp, and like she's into buying pedals, and like we're like gear hounds now. My friend Mike has a great music shop in Red Bank. Well, I have to say, it's not a regular music shop at all. Like Mike is a different kind of person. He's a different kind of business owner. He's also a musician, a guitar player, and
What
he
is
has
the
bands.
Because that's like 10 minutes from my house.
Yeah, it's called Relic Music.
Okay, yeah, I know that one. Cool. I gotta
Yeah.
win there.
No, yeah, everyone in there is great. But and he's also very encouraging. Like outside of his business, he's been very instrumental in like helping like point us in a direction. I'll give you an example. So when we started out, it was I'm on guitar, Carrie's on guitar, oldest is on bass, youngest was on drums and vocal. My youngest is a natural born front person.
Dude, Wilder is Iggy
This is-
Pop.
We
He's
named him
Iggy
right.
Pop, dude.
I'm gonna say we named him right. So, anyways, we
Yeah.
we do it. We have an Instagram, and we're all like, at the time, we're all very new at like, being in a band and getting together and like trying to sound good. But then doing it, like, we don't care. Like, that's part of the punk spirit. Is I want to quote, is it one of the Ramones? I'm terrible with names, so don't come at me, anybody, because I don't know somebody's name. I don't know hardly anybody's name. But it was one of the Ramones that's basically said, was having a conversation with somebody that wanted to start a band, and they were basically saying like, oh, we're just waiting until we're good enough. And he's like, well, then you're never going to be ready. Just do it. Just go do it. Like, get your guitars, get in front of an audience, and just do it. Because that's how you're really going to know. Like, that's when you're going to know. Anyhow, we're doing these videos, and he sent me a text. He's like, listen, get Wilder out from behind the drum kit and get a drummer. He belongs in the spotlight. Like, put him in the spotlight. And we did, and the band has just taken off.
That's great.
Like, a pretty awesome experience. We've played several live shows. We put on our own first show. It was a Halloween special. One or two Halloweens ago. Not this last Halloween. Maybe it was the previous Halloween. But we rented out a space in an Elks Lodge, keeping it full punk, DIY,
Yeah.
and invited all of the kids' friends and our friends. We had people come in from Brooklyn and Manhattan and all over, and ordered a bunch of pizzas, and just like, we played 30 minutes of Cramp songs.
Yeah, talk about some of your influences. I think the influences are fantastic, and the fact that your kids are indoctrinated into this this style of music, and I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, well, so before moving, we were listening to the Cramps and learning Cramps songs. First one being "Way I Walk," which is a cover. The Cramps actually did quite a few covers, but they kind of stripped them back and made them more up to date in terms of their timeline, by adding different effects, but then pulling it back to like raw rock and roll, which is really the spirit of punk rock in a way. Is that the early punk, anyways? Is that the earlier rock and roll? But there is a song, "Way I Walk," and Wilder is definitely his own person. He's not like any other kid, and he sometimes will get a vibe, without going into too much detail, from people at school. But he's still distinctly his own. Like, he's not afraid to like have his own style. Like, he has a cheetah pattern coat, that he wears, and like he likes, things that are very kind of flashy, and like the lead singer of a rock and roll band would.
Right.
So that song is, the lyrics are, the way I walk is just the way I walk. It's like, so deal with it. And so we that was our first song, and in a way he really liked it, and I liked the song for him because it was like a way for him to like just say to everybody, I'm me. It's like, and if you have a problem with it, that's a you problem.
Right.
That's not my problem.
Well, it was interesting too, because like it was at that point where like you could see the whole family begin to own it. Like this is not just a hobby. We are owning this, and there's a lot of swagger there. There's a ton of swagger.
Dude.
And I know
we walk around town. I'm not joking, and it's, we're local, okay, but we can walk around town, whether we're South Orange, Maplewood, or even in West Orange, and people will be like, "Are you the Dowtones?" Like, yeah, they're like, "Oh," like it's a kick, dude. It's a kick.
I love it. So we got the whole music thing going on. That's essentially replaced surfing, in a very passionate way. And you were embarking on what preceded the punk rock posters. You were working on a body of work that was like a series of postcards that were like small scale. They were like small scale works that you were mailing to people.
Those were punk rock postcards.
Yeah.
It's all connected. Well, abstract. I was calling them abstract punk rock postcards. So I'm going to interject a little bit here, just because it goes to what you're talking about when we were discussing going where the energy is.
Right.
So we move. I get a studio, and I start making work, and I'm trying to pick up where I left off in Rhode Island, just as a way to get the ball rolling. And I feel like I'm making, good work. I'm still being shy about showing it to many people, because I won't get into it. It's another conversation. But I feel like I have to work on something, get an idea rolling long enough to like before I'm really ready to share it. Like I want to develop it. Anyhow, 2 years go by. The Dowtones are happening. We're a full on, punk band doing shows. And I come back in the studio one day. Actually, I had a studio visit with somebody who was looking at my work, and we were talking about like ephemera, like punk rock ephemera, like zines and posters and flyers.
Right.
And I'm just going to quickly say that all ties to the work I was making before moving to Rhode Island. I was making these paintings that were, I referred to them as like the transfer paintings, because there was a process of like working things in the computer and then transferring imagery onto a painting to kind of blend a kind of like a digital collaging element into like the wet kind of paint process.
That's interesting.
But
I always put you in like the same grouping of artists like Kate Stetchute and Letha Wilson, who do similar things. I never really thought about that with your practice till you just said that, which is kind of cool. Would you agree that those contemporaries are kind of
absolutely
right? Yeah, like
in the way that they're kind of challenging materials.
Yes,
and challenging like the idea of like traditional, like with Letha's example, using like concrete and photographs to make a sculpture.
Yeah,
is like wild, like, and I love it. And in my case, using abstract, like a reproduction of abstract imagery, basically pasted on top of, in a transparent way, more abstract imagery to arrive at an image. But that part of where it's coming into the music thing is the kind of pasting up these repetitive things and then like pulling them down, kind of like wheat poster
Mhm.
thing was very much, what I was thinking about with that work then. Fast forward to now, I'm thinking about not so much the imagery, like the literal imagery of like something that is punk rock or hardcore or some kind of like music thing, but what the feeling of that is, and then what the intention behind that music is. And a lot of that music, and especially the earlier recordings, it's done in very few takes. There's not a lot of overdubs. There's mistakes, but they weren't going for perfection. They were going for harnessing a kind of energy,
That's the
harnessing
richness
a
of that
performance.
work, that early work that people produce. It's raw. It's, there are mistakes. And I feel like it's difficult for artists. Maybe you would agree. I'd like your opinion on this. Because you have a long career now, but like you become branded. Like I look at your work and I go, I could go walk into a guy, that's a Kris Chatterson.
Mhm.
And if it's a new thing, like I can recognize your work. Um, and how do you deal with that at this point, having made all these moves? Like, do you feel kind of like you have to now make those identifiable pieces again that wind up in this show? Or is it still evolving? Like I see it evolving, but how do you feel about that process? Because you're at that point in your career where not that you're stuck making the thing, but you're like it becomes like like identifiable, and you almost have to continue doing that, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, and it's all of the above. It is evolving, and I actually had a really great visit with the person that runs Satchel, and
Okay.
we talked about that a little bit, and she was like, it's kind of like what you said. It's still going to look like your work,
Yeah.
whether it has this thing or this process that you were known for, or if it's this other thing. Like I can still tell it's you. And that kind of gave me permission in a way, hearing her say that, okay, well, I'm not going to worry about that so much. And I'm just going to, back to what we were talking about, just follow the energy and just let things develop. Interestingly, one of the paintings she picked out for the show was a painting I kind of had like stashed over in the corner, and
Mhm.
I wasn't going to show, because in my mind, it didn't fit the bigger picture of like the work that I was showing her. And she has a very keen eye, and she's like, "What's that one over there?" And I was like, "No, no, no, I don't know." And I brought it over, and she was like, "No, that's something. Like
Mm.
that's a really nice painting. I really like that." And then she sent me, when she was curating the show, she sent a picture of it that she had taken. She's like, "Can you send me this one?" I didn't even know she took a picture of it.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where, again, like I'm not as in control of all of this, and that at the point I'm at in my career, it regardless of what I make, it's still going to look like what I make,
Yeah.
and actually having her pick that painting out and talk about that painting is, I'm like kind of rethinking some of the work now, and like allowing other things in that I thought maybe I shouldn't let in.
Yeah. I was thinking about what Chris is saying about Chris Coffin, about like you too, and like how I said, I wish they stopped making music at a certain point because I don't like the later stuff. And I always wondered about like artists like I love Cindy Sherman's early photographs.
Mhm.
Her contemporary stuff is just like, it seems like she's trapped in making these repetitive things that are kind of along the same vein, but now she's using like prosthetics and it looks like, I don't know, like a McCarthy thing. And I'm like, wow, it must suck to be like pigeonholed in that. And similarly, like if you saw the de Kooning retrospective, it was sad because you could tell
I
he was
did.
tired at the end. And like I was walking through, like I love his work, but at the end I'm like, holy shit, like how exhausted is he?
Do you know? I'll tell you. I like the late paintings.
You do?
I know I like them for what they are.
I
I like them as the final chapter in the arc of this person's career. And when I look at them, I'm not comparing them to the heroic work of the abstract expressionists, era of the post-war era. I look at them as the last works that this man made, and they still are his. I can see his hand in the work.
absolutely.
I don't like them as much, but that doesn't mean that I don't know. That's like, when we talk about U2, it's like I don't like it as much and we know it's not as good, but like doesn't mean that it's bad. Because I'm looking at the macroscopic arc of the career. That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah. So you're looking at it as okay, but like I look at your work and I see it evolving. I like where it's going, and I'm like, but it's still a Chatterson. And with all the moves you've made, it's kind of. Now I was very happy to get one in the mail.
Oh, thanks. Thanks.
Like,
Well,
do you still have like to get studio visits in the Oranges right now? Or is it the same? Because I remember getting studio visits in Ridgewood was impossible.
well, my studio, I'm in the Mana building in Jersey City, so
okay.
it hasn't. I've been pretty. It's been pretty easy, because people can just take the path and walk over.
Amazing.
And it's a great building. Like I love the building. I feel like, a professional. If that makes any sense. It's just, there's security and there's a cafe, there's galleries. There's always people running around doing interesting things. There's artists in the building, but there's also like fashion people and like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's photographers. There's always cool stuff going on.
Man, cool.
So it's nice to feel like there are other people doing cool things.
Yeah.
I enjoy, and I know we've talked about this over the years, Kris. We've talked about social media and the use of social media, and sometimes the fallacy of social media, or the ability to craft a story, or the ability to represent yourself, or to erroneously craft a story. And I think we've always talked about the fact that we have this love-hate relationship with it. But one thing that I do enjoy, and I find it a whole lot of fun, are your posts, because you deny the viewer a lot of what you're doing. And I think that's an interesting story that you tell through images. And every once in a while, you get a glimpse of like the corner of a painting or a splatter of paint on the floor, and it leaves the viewer wanting more. It's very enticing. So tell us about that.
Well, it's partly a strategy in that
it's definitely a strategy, and I like it.
Well, the algorithm needs to be fed, right? Or else that it won't shoot you out there. You also want to still be in people's memory, or because that there is a very true saying, out of sight, out of mind. So you just want people to know you're working, and you want the algorithm to know that you're still breathing, right? That's part of it. The other part, though, is I really believe in like an artist needs time to develop an idea. And when an idea is developing, it's not always meant for public view. Right? Now, if people come into my studio and we're having hard conversations and like really getting into it, that has to happen first. And the work develops, then it's ready for public view. Right. I'm not at this point in my life and in my career, I'm not under, and this is kind of a thing that happened while in Rhode Island, really, is I've gained this sense of I'm ready when I'm ready, and not a moment too soon. I'm not going to force it. In fact, when I do force it, it doesn't come out as good as it could have. Is when I'm relaxed and have a lot of different things happening. So, some paintings happen fast and they just kind of, I use a term my mentor would use back in the day, just fall out of your head. And then some paintings take like months, and it's just months of looking and waiting. David Lynch just passed away not long ago.
Right.
So I've been listening to a lot of his conversations that he's had. And one of the things he keeps talking about is the importance of giving yourself time and space to go fishing for ideas. And he talks about it in this very matter-of-fact way that I resonate with. It's like, yeah, that's what it is. Like, he's like, oh, I go and I try to catch an idea. And when I catch an idea, I then try to, I'll write it. In his case, being most a filmmaker and a painter, but he was like making notes and writing it down. And in my case, I have to be, and this is where the kind of exiting from surfing also ties in. I have to be in my studio to make work. And being in my studio is where I catch the ideas and then put them down in real time. Currently I have about 20 paintings or more, all in various states of progress. And when I'm working, I go in and I look and I listen. And whichever painting or groups of paintings, this is going to sound crazy to people that are not creative, but I'm just going to talk about it anyways. There will be a painting or a couple of paintings, and they'll start talking to me. And what I mean by that is I'll start to have a vision for like what could be next. I'll get like a flash of a color or like a move or like a series of patterns. And as soon as I have it, the moment I have it, I take the painting down and I do that thing. And then usually after the one, then ideas start rolling. Then I'm catching ideas. I'm fishing, and then I kind of laugh to myself. I'm like, I'm fucking David Lynch over here catching ideas. This is great.
Oh man.
But that's when I moved to Rhode Island and we had our second child, Wilder, and I was trying to work. And I say trying to work because that's what it really was. I was trying to work. I wasn't really able to work. I was trying to work. It occurred to me, and I couldn't be honest with myself about it at the time, even though I knew it to be true. I knew it would be a while before I could work at the level that I was working prior, because there is a truth to having hours and hours long sessions in the studio uninterrupted.
Well, I was talking about this with John today. I actually met up with John Baylor at the coffee shop afterwards, and we were just talking about kids. And we were talking, and he said, "Oh, how old's your son now?" And I'm like, 15. He's like, "Oh my God,
Yeah.
like, how did that happen?" And I'm just like,
it's a different world, teenagers.
well, we were, I said to him, I said, dude, you're coming out of the weeds. I go, you're going to find more free time. And I think also like you were in Rhode Island for a reason, right? And that reason was family and raising kids at a moment in time where it was really important while they were young. And now they're not fully self-sufficient, but they're their own little young people, and now you can find the time. You can give yourself that gift of time. So that continuity in the studio is just a byproduct of your kids getting older too.
Yeah, well, that was also part of how we ended up back in this direction. Is once we decided like, okay, it's time to go, part of that decision was like, well, the kids are not what they were, they're not toddlers. At the time, my oldest was in 4th grade and Wilder was in like 1st. Yeah. And so when we moved mid-year, Jackson finished 4th grade here and Wilder finished 2nd grade here. So we moved midway. But that was part of the like, they don't need us the way that they did before.
As much, right? It changes. Yeah.
It totally. So, our routine now is I get up really early and I work a full 8 hours and I come home in time for them to come home.
Mm-hmm.
And so Carrie kind of gets them out the door and then I'm home to like welcome them back home and give them a snack. And, by that point, it's make sure homework's done and then get dinner ready and that whole thing. And it's not a hard thing to do at all. It's very, they can take care of themselves. They can feed themselves breakfast and get themselves dressed.
Here, but I'm so in the thick of it, guys.
Dude, yeah. I was like,
you're in a different world, dude. You're in a different world.
I must say, like, I knew that I could ask you both to start this podcast a couple minutes late because you both have children.
Yeah, no big deal.
But like, I've got a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old.
Yeah, you're deep in it.
You're in it, man.
You're really in it.
I actually got in the water today, and I was like, that's amazing. But I had to cancel a dinner and everything. But it is a thing where you're like, you really understand the value of time after having children.
Right. Yeah.
And and that time isn't just yours all the time.
No.
But
I appreciate you're saying that you're getting out the door, you're making it work with your wife. You've maintained an active and lucrative art practice. Like, that wasn't easy, especially with all the moves you've made. So, I look forward to seeing more of the work. Like, I definitely want to do a studio visit soon.
Sure.
Now that you're down the road for me, like just up the road, but that's huge. Like, just hearing that is refreshing.
Yeah. Well, I'll say when I was in the thick of it, it's hard to know that there's anything different.
Yeah.
Right? But you're probably seeing it a little bit with your 7-year-old now.
Oh yeah.
But there'll be a day and you'll be like, okay, they don't need me like that anymore.
Yeah.
And there's it's like a bittersweet.
I agree with you. I just and this, it's so funny we're talking about nothing related to surfing or art right now. But I just recently had a conversation with somebody about being sad. Being sad because like one day you wake up and you're like, wow, I can't cuddle with my little baby anymore. I can't. My son used to think that the sun would rise and set with daddy, and like he was my little buddy and we could do anything together and it was great. And like now, like he comes home and he's grumpy and he just wants to like play online with his friends, and he eats and then disappears, and I'm like, but what about me?
He's like, nah, man.
He's all grumpy and everything, and I'm just like, fine, dude, all right, you'll come back. I know you'll be back.
So with Satchel we'll get back to the art, but with Satchel, are you represented by them now, or is that like a full-time thing, a one-off, like just a group show?
So it's a group show. So Satchel is an artist-run space, and they don't represent artists, and that gives her the freedom to just show who and what she wants to show, when and where, which I think is great.
Yeah,
I don't love all artist-run spaces, but I really love her space and a handful of others. But I think she's like a punk rock like outlet in the middle of Chelsea.
Well, it's nice. It's not obligatory that she has to have a show. Like, she wants you in that show.
Yeah.
She doesn't owe you that, which is nice.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
No, in fact, I just, so I had a visit with her the day after the election. So it wasn't like nobody was in a great mood, but we did the visit, and it was a really great visit. Like, and I had no idea she was, and I don't think she was planning on the show either. And I wasn't expecting to be, in a show in her space at any time soon. But 3 or 4 weeks ago, I got a text, "Hey, can you send me some images of those new paintings you're making?" I'm like, "Sure." And I sent her, and she's like, "I'm doing this show. Do you want to be in it?" I'm like, "I'm in." Like, anti-authoritarian, I'm in. Like, whatever you need, I'm already. I don't need to know anything else. If you're doing it, I'm in.
Yeah. And that's good. And how much longer is the show up for?
I think 2 more weeks after this week.
All right.
You got to get in and see it. It's a great space. It's a great group of work. Whatever I've seen at that gallery, because it's a new space, Kris, right? I remember seeing it was just kind of like a much smaller little space, and now it's a bigger, smaller space, which I like. I like the scale.
Yeah, but it's significant in size. I was checking it out. It's big for Chelsea.
Yeah,
Well-
it's March 6th through April 5th. Authority
Yeah.
Problem.
Yeah, it's good.
And it's a great group of artists too, all different modes of working, coming at the idea from different ways. It's pretty great. And I didn't even know the artist list, because I trusted Andrea so much to, like, whatever she was going to do, I knew it would be great.
Yeah, it's a very cohesive show. It's good. It's really good.
Nice.
So what's next? Really briefly, before we start winding down here, what's next?
All right. Well, I have to talk about Chromatic Twins,
Yeah, for sure.
which is the band. Well, it's more than a band that Carrie and I started, and it started off actually as more of a visual art kind of collaboration, like a collaboration between art and design with her and I. Because when we were in Rhode Island, kind of under lockdown, I was like, we got to find a way to work together, because we're in our given kind of field or our buckets. We're really good at what we do, but what we do is also kind of opposite. And if we could find a way to, like, work together in some way, it could be.
Right.
I thought it would be pretty powerful. And so we tried some things, and it kind of worked, but we couldn't get it to launch for whatever reason. And a lot of it has to do with just the other things that happen in your life. And we're doing the dot tones, and I'm like, you know what? This is our collaboration. Like, we're really collaborating on this dot tones thing, because most all of the visuals is all her. She's doing the branding and the designing and all of that. And I forget which one of us said it. I was like, what if Chromatic Twins just became a collaboration between the two of us that involved music, and we take some of our sound and music ideas and make it into something that's more than just music and more than just visual art, and make it one thing. And we've been reading a lot of music books, and we read the Kraftwerk book, and I didn't know this. There's a German word that basically means, like, the artwork is, like, all encompassing. It's all of everything. And I'm probably going to butcher it because I don't speak German, but it's Gestaltungswerk. And it's like, it means the work of art is all of everything, loosely translated. So Kraftwerk, it wasn't just the music, it was the design, it was the stage presence, it was the animations, and we actually just saw them on Friday, which is awesome.
Yeah, they
Like,
played in
just-
They played in Brooklyn, didn't they?
They did Brooklyn and they did the Beacon in Manhattan. So we
Right.
went to that one. And so that's one of our influences in terms of working sonically and like arranging music and sounds that's also aesthetically too. As if you've seen any of the Chromatics Twin stuff we've done, like everything is considered, from the clothes we're wearing to the backgrounds. We're doing green screen so we can have like things happening in the background. It's like it's all one thing. The whole thing is the artwork.
Yeah, I dig what you guys are doing. It's very performance art based. You can see that everything is highly curated, and I was even talking with Carrie at the exhibition. I was like, I got to get one of those T-shirts with the Venus flytraps on them, and she was just like, "Oh, we have some of those. Those are super cool." She's like, "I made those," and I was like, "They're cool." So yeah, it's all good. So listen, let's we always do this thing called on the clock, and you know what on the clock is. It's a rapid fire succession of questions where we're just going to throw some questions at you and you got to answer them and we're going to move on.
Let's roll.
Can you do it? All right.
I'm on. Let's go.
Yeah. So, it was kind of tough because like usually these questions are very surf centric. And I was like,
Yep.
shit, I can't do that. I can't do that anymore. All right, so here you go. What is your favorite foot pedal and why?
Like guitar pedal?
Yeah. Because I know you have a bunch.
Yeah, that's a hard choice. I'll say it's my Sending V2 delay by Electric Audio Experiments.
And why do you like that one?
It's a really good sounding delay that has modulation, so you can get kind of almost like a chorusing, but also has these, I don't know if I'm using the right terminology, but you can send the repeats out in a loop to another pedal, so you can color the repeats. So whatever your guitar tone is going in stays what it is, but the repeats in the delay will be affected by whatever chain of pedals you have going through there. So you could have it hooked up to a fuzz, or you could have it hooked up to like a shimmering reverb and have them like kind of go off in outer space, all still while maintaining the kind of pointedness or directness of whatever your initial guitar tone is.
I love it. That's awesome. All right. What are you currently listening to? I know you listen to a ton, but what is inspiring you right now?
In the studio.
Okay, in the studio, I like a band I just kind of found out about called Gustav. They're actually a New York band. They're really cool. I like in the studio. There's another band that just released a new album that I like, that I found out about during the pandemic era, called Deep Sea Diver. Let's see, Fontaines DC, Idols,
All that.
Also some
Two of
like
my
older
favorite
jazz like Kenny Burrell.
Mm-hmm.
Let me look at my library real quick, because I get my memory is not what it used to be. I'll just say that. Oh, Mannequin Pussy. They're a Philly band.
Dude, they're so good. I love them.
They're really good.
Yeah, they're really
and I found out about them maybe 2 albums ago, and I liked them, and I knew they were good, but this album in particular they've taken it to another level, and they've got this new guitar player who just rips. And it's freed up. I don't know her name, but the lead singer, I think at one point played guitar, but it's freed her up to just be the front person and just go all out and leave the guitar playing to the new guitar player, and it works.
They're fantastic. I got clued into them, and I think they played up in New Haven not too long ago, and I couldn't make it. But yeah, I'm into them too. So
Well, one more.
yeah,
The band I took Jackson to see the night of the opening was Spirit of the Beehive. They were really cool. I'll just say they're genre fluid. It's the best way to describe them, but really cool. All right, go ahead.
what surfboard did you keep from your extensive quiver, and why?
Oh man, it had to be my Burrito Deluxe, my Little Designs Burrito Deluxe, because that was the board I rode the most.
Hmm.
You know, and I kept all the boards that I had shaped too.
Right.
I couldn't let those go. But there were certain breaks in Rhode Island where on the right day, that was, even on the wrong day, it was like the board that I liked the most.
I rode your Honey Badger today.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's a good one too.
Oh, so good. What visual artist are you most inspired by right now?
Just one?
Yeah.
I don't know. And I don't want that to seem like a cop-out, but I'm so deep into my language right now, my vocabulary, developing the work.
Right.
I'm not really... There's like phases that I'll go through, and there's either a reception phase where I'm just looking at a lot of things and I'm like pulling a lot of information in and sorting it out. And then there's the opposite where I'm just like, I need to make the work. And I'm in that make the work phase. And that's not to say that I'm not influenced by people or I don't have people that I look to, but I'm not in that headspace right now.
Yeah, I get it. Sometimes you got to close the door, not look. I get it. All right, dude. This was great. This was great catching up. I think it's important to understand the evolution and the second chapter, or maybe even third chapter.
Yeah, and then the many chapters to come too, because
no doubt,
it's cool stuff.
No doubt,
cool stuff happening.
What's going on? It's pretty exciting.
Oh, there's one thing I wrote down though. I was thinking about what we would talk about, and going back to following the energy.
Yeah.
There's another component to that I just kind of wanted to end on. And it has to do with where you put your energy is often what develops too. So there's like a balance. Going where the energy is sometimes also the place where you're putting the energy. So be mindful of where you put your energy, because that's what's going to develop.
So many things about like adult prioritization that come to mind.
Yeah.
What did you said something? You said something to me the other day. Oh man, I always listen really hard to what people say, and I take sentences and I put them in my back pocket and I hang on to them. I don't know. I'll remember. See, there's the memory thing. I can't remember. Oh
well. Going back to David Lynch, and he would talk about like living the art life, right? And there's a level of, I don't know what's the right word, of like dedication or like discipline that you have to give yourself the space and the time to catch those ideas and develop them. And there was a moment where I was paddling out in Rhode Island, and it was like a mediocre day. And I know it was a day I might get a handful of waves, and it would be fine. And I was thinking, like, is this serving me in my real priorities in a meaningful way? Or am I just going surfing because it's like something to do? Like, shouldn't I really be in my studio working, catching ideas and developing that? And when those like fissures start to open, that's usually the beginning of when the whole thing will collapse.
Mm-hmm. We were just talking, I don't know, our interview is probably pretty much over, but we were talking with another guest a few nights ago on another recording that we were doing, and we were talking about giving yourself the gift of silence, or being present in the moment, or in relationship to surfing, like understanding that like it will give to you what you need in that moment, and you have to recognize when it's given to you. Like maybe the swell goes flat, and that's nature speaking to you. That's nature saying, now's the time for you to go to your studio. And then when the waves turn on, that's nature saying, like, put that practice down for a little bit and go extract some of that goodness that experience is going to give to you and bring it back into the studio. So, that I think that kind of dovetails the prioritization that I think as adults we have to recognize, so that you can get your work done in a productive way, a mindful way.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, I'm going to hit stop.
Cool.
Kris, it's been amazing.
That's when I get the shakes on